Thanks so much for joining us on the Autism Outreach podcast. We have a stellar episode today. I had the joy of speaking with Billy Mayfair, and I was just so excited about this interview for so many reasons, but I'm a big fan of his. If you ever watch my Instagram, you know that I like to golf. I'm not like amazing, but golf is a very, very big part of my life. My dad grew up golfing with me, and now I play with my husband all during the summer. That's when you can play here in Ohio. So if you're not sure who Billy Mayfair is, he is one of the top professional golfers in the United States and has been a regular on the PGA Tour since 1989. He boasts 5 PGA Tour victories and is the only player to ever beat Tiger Woods in a PGA Tour playoff. He is currently playing on the PGA Tour Champions. He was diagnosed with autism in 2019. So I wanted to do an episode for an individual who's been diagnosed later in life. And Billy shares that journey with us. So he was just diagnosed in 2019. And along with his family, he has began a nonprofit foundation tasked with providing support to both amateur and professional athletes and families who have an autistic individual in their family. So today on the podcast, we talk about Billy's journey. We talk about him growing up. We talk about what, if any, supports he had in school. When I have autistic adults on the podcast, I really do like to talk with them about what was their school life like? Did they have any supports? Did they struggle academically? Did they struggle socially? And what supports help them? As a public school speech therapist, I always want to know how I can help support my students in a greater way. And so then we talk about some of the concerns that his wife had, that he had kind of along his journey to getting a diagnosis. And once he was diagnosed, how he initially felt about that, and really how it's helped him know just how he's thinking about things and maybe how he's processing things. And one of the things we also talk about is advocating for yourself. So self-advocacy. This is an amazing episode. I'm so very excited to share Billy Mayfair's journey with you.
You're listening to Autism Outreach Podcast, a podcast full of ready-to-use strategies to help those with autism strengthen their communication skills. Here's your host, Rose Griffin of ABA Speech, a speech therapist and board-certified behavior analyst who shares tips you can use in your next therapy session.
Thanks so much for joining us on episode 67 of the Autism Outreach Podcast. We have a really great episode today. We have with us Billy Mayfair. Thanks so much for joining us, Billy. It's so nice to have you on.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been really looking forward to this. Thank you.
That's awesome. And so I'm a big golf fan, so I'm aware of who you are. I mean, I don't want you to see me swing a golf club or anything. I do play. I'm located here in Ohio, so there's only a couple months that you can actually really play, but we get out there, we do couples, and I do women's league and all the things. So, but for those of our audience that may not be familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to?
Well, I've been very fortunate in my whole career. I've been able to play golf. I was on the PGA Tour, exempt out there for almost 28 years. Played a lot of memorials there at Jack's Place and all that. And actually, when I turned professional, I got to play at Scioto. It was my first Champions or U.S. Open there at Scioto. So I'm very familiar with the Ohio area and all that. But I was born and raised here in Phoenix, Arizona. Went to grade school and high school and to college here in the state of Arizona. And like I said, got on the tour in 89. We kind of keep that kind of quiet when I got out there a long time ago. But I've been very fortunate and very blessed to have a very successful career, but being out there doing what I love to do. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago that my wife had me diagnosed, and we found out that I had very high functioning autism.
Yeah, amazing. I was reading that you're in Arizona, and I was telling Billy before we got on that I live in Ohio, and my goal is to snowbird out in Arizona. So we love Scottsdale and actually Pinnacle Peak Park. I don't know if you know what that is.
Oh,
Probably it's
yes.
out in your area, but there's like this amazing, what I think is probably a country club that when you get to the top of this really cool hike, you can see it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I want to play there. That looks
Yeah.
like a really nice course.
It
But
is. You have a little bit fear of heights, which I do, and that's
oh,
not. I get on that tee real quick and hit it real fast and get out of there.
oh, so there are some, okay. Yeah. Cause that Pinnacle
There's-
Peak Park is like just a walk, but it's you have to be in good shape. I actually did it. I was pregnant with one of my second child, and we went out there for a little baby moon, and
okay.
I was very winded. It's kind of a big hike out there. So
People don't realize going up, you don't realize it all the time when you're going up or downhill on these mountains. It's hard.
Yeah. That's so cool that you're from there. But I'm really excited to talk with you today because I have wanted to do a podcast. I've had this podcast. It's a weekly podcast for about a year. And I have autistic individuals on from time to time, as well as, providers. And so I've wanted to do an episode about late diagnosis of autism. And so with my love of golf and being so inspired by your career and your story, as I started to kind of research it, that this really kind of fits in with something that you could share your journey with us. So
Yes.
It sounds like you just, got diagnosed in the past couple of years. And so can you tell us about some of the struggles that, you faced prior to having this formal diagnosis?
Well, I was always kind of to myself. I'd love to go out and practice. Golf was a safe haven for me. I'd love to go out to the golf course and hit golf balls for hours and chip and putt and go out and play and do things. And I always liked doing it by myself. Some kids love to have matches and let's do this. And I always kind of wanted to get off by myself and do my own thing. And even when I got on the PGA Tour, I'd go out and play my practice rounds and play, but I would, eat by myself and not socialize all that much and never realized that this was something that was maybe abnormal. Most of the guys out there didn't do that, but that's the way I was functioning, and I kind of used it, I thought, to my advantage.
Yeah. So did you have any? So growing up, did you have any types of supports in school, or no? Because it really just wasn't on your radar, huh?
No, I didn't at all. I struggled through school. School was very difficult. I put a lot of time and effort into it and didn't get the grades that I thought maybe I deserved to have. I knew a lot of times I knew the information. Didn't get the grades that I should have. So it was hard and all that. But at that time when I was going through high school and all that, they didn't know what autism was. And I even had high school counselor at Camelback here say, don't bother going to college. You're not going to be able to do it, especially if you play a sport. Just go out and get a job and struggle with whatever you can. And I think that was kind of motivation for me to go to college and to get through it and to do that. And I have found that with a lot of people that I have met over the last few years with autism, that for everyone, there's always that one person who tells you that you can't do it and that motivation to do it. And as we all know, people who do have autism, we're real stubborn. So we were very stubborn. And I think that's helped me a great deal.
Yeah, you kind of get set. Yeah, those are some of my biggest motivators in starting. I have a small business, but back in the day when I would, reach out to somebody or I wouldn't hear back from, somebody that was going to sell my product, I would be like, okay, that's fine. I'm going to get it in 10 other places, right? So sometimes that can be a real motivator. So growing up, did you struggle with any social aspects or sometimes, so I'm a school speech therapist, middle school, high school. And so sometimes we could have students that have an autism diagnosis and they may not even really be getting any type of speech therapy services. Sometimes it's hard for students who, are on grade level academically or, are not really struggling as much, or it's kind of like a hidden struggle. But did you, it seems like, you said you kind of kept to yourself. Did it bother you that maybe you weren't socializing that much or really wasn't something you wanted to do?
I don't want to say it's not what I wanted to do. I just thought that was the norm. I just that's how most people were, and that's the way. And I didn't look at myself being different, even after I was diagnosed. And we could talk about this later, but even my denial period I had, I'm normal. Everybody else is messed up. I'm normal, and and it wasn't until I was diagnosed and read the report that things started kind of to make sense. And I think that's one of the advantages of being diagnosed at an older age. now when you go back and you look at things and say, okay, hey, I did this in high school and I did this and I went and did that, now that makes sense to me. And that's for me when the light bulb went off. Once I finally sat down and listen, I kicked and screamed and was upset about, even reading after the diagnosis and all that. And in my time when I did read it, things started making more sense to me. And I said to myself, it's okay that I'm this way. And it's okay that I think this way. And, God, I think, has put me on this earth with this gift. I look at it as a gift now that I know how to kind of get better. And if there was a blessing during COVID, we weren't playing the tour. So I was able to work with a neuropsychologist, a psychologist here in Arizona, and a nutritionist to kind of help my body and help myself get better and to be able to deal with it better and better. But as we all know, we struggle with it and we learn something new every day.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said that your wife was kind of instrumental in helping you see that maybe you needed to get an evaluator. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I know it seems like now, I spend a very inordinate amount of time on social media. So I'm sure you're not on these apps like I am, but I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok even for my small business. And there's a lot of people out there talking about self-diagnosis or, you can get a formal diagnosis. And I know that it sounds like you got a formal diagnosis, but can you talk to us a little bit about the evaluation or, did your wife bring it up to you and think that this might be something that would be good for you?
Well, what happened, my wife kind of always suspected it. She was kind of doing her own research, reading her own books. Yeah. And then 3 years ago over in Los Angeles at the PGA Tour event in California, I was disqualified after the Saturday round and wrongfully. And wife noticed that I couldn't comprehend what they were trying to tell me, and I wasn't able to stand up for myself. Right. And I was disqualified, which I found out a week later from the United States Golf Association that I did do everything correctly, and that the tour was wrong for disqualifying me. But it was the fact that I didn't stand up for myself. I couldn't comprehend what was going on, and that's when she made the decision that I needed to get tested and do that. And like I said, I kicked and screamed all the way there. I didn't want to do it, and I threatened to leave her and all that stuff. Even after I had the test done, it took me at least 3 weeks to read the final report. And I think sometimes when people do that, when it's your turn or when your time when you want to read it, you'll read it. Right. And when you do, it will open your eyes. And that's one of the blessings, I think, of being diagnosed at an older age, that things now start making a lot more sense to you and why you are the way you are.
Right. So did you feel like, so initially it seems like you were hesitant, but then after the diagnosis, how did you feel about that?
Well, one of the biggest problems I had with my autism was facial expressions. Yeah. People would talk to me, and while they were talking to me, my mind would start wandering and go in other places and all that. Right. And one of the things we found with the tour is that when they would interrupt me after my tee shot and tell me about pace of play or something that was going on, my brain went back to square one and it had to reprocess everything. Right. So I almost looked like I was being defiant and being an idiot out there, like I was trying to act like I was trying to be slow when my brain was just trying to process information a little bit differently. And I guess one of the things I've found through all this in the years is if you need a couple extra minutes to think about this or to digest information, it's okay to say that. Can you just give me a second? Let me think about this for a minute. And if the person doesn't want to give it to you, then they're not worth talking to. But it's just finding out that, hey, you know what? It's okay to ask for that extra couple minutes or a minute or two. Let me, or ask someone a question so that you fully understand what's going on.
Yeah, I love that. And that's something as a speech therapist, I work with my students who are in middle school, high school. I work with some autistic students. And when you're in a public school, you work with all different types of students. But definitely at that age range, we work on self-advocacy. And so we work on that all the time. Like now with COVID here in Ohio, we have to wear masks. And that is upsetting to some of my students. And so we talk about advocating for a mask break and put that into the students, IEP, which is kind of like some supports that they have in school. school. So that's really good to know that that's something, that you feel comfortable advocating for yourself. And that makes me feel good as a provider, because that's something I'm trying to work with my students who, when you're in middle school, high school, I'm always thinking of my kids as they become adults, because I always tell them, especially, I always say, that how you're acting now, or if you don't say anything, just like you said, I say to some of the boys, especially, I say, that may come across as being defiant, as not listening, when really maybe you're processing it and you really need to practice saying these things. And then that's what we do in the therapy room, practice in the therapy room. And then it'd be a little easier to generalize when you need to in that moment. So that makes me feel good that I'm on the right track there.
Oh, you're definitely on the right track. And then, like I said, I had a kind of a special thing happen to me last year on the tour. I had a bunch of autistic kids come out and watch me play the last 9 holes of a golf tournament. And I didn't know they were out there. Yeah. And it was a long day for me. I wasn't playing very good and I was tired. But when I got done playing, I sat and talked to them for about an hour and a half. And the energy that these young people gave to me, and the seeing the relief on their parents' face that somebody was trying to get to them and all that. And it's exactly as you said, it's okay if you don't catch on to everything. It's okay to take a few extra seconds. And if someone tells you you can't do it because of your autism, you tell them, yes, I can.
Yeah.
And it was really neat for have them to come out and watch me play golf, but it was even more energetic for me to be around them. And that's and I can see that in your expressions too, that when you find that and you help them, it's just gives you such a great feeling.
It does. Yeah, that's amazing. So you talked a little bit, and I've done a little research, but could you talk to us about, after you had the diagnosis, and I know you formally probably announced that and things like that. Do you have any supports in place now? In your work, so you have an amazing work setting, but do you have any supports secondary to that diagnosis that are kind of helping you with the way that that your brain is operating and all those things?
Well, yeah, as I said, I'm out on the road. Obviously, when I'm home, I'm talking to a neuropsychologist, a psychologist. And the one thing that's probably helped me the greatest over the past years, I've been working hard with a nutritionist. Okay. And I've found that a lot of people who have autism, and it was me too, craved sugar. Sugar was one of them. Mountain Dew was a big point for me.
Yeah.
And is a lot for candy, is a lot for a lot of people. And I really had to control my diet so that my brain can be calmer, so that I can think calmer. Yeah. But I also did find out too, though, that with autism, if you do the cup of coffee or that Mountain Dew before you go to bed, sometimes can actually relax you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been kind of a struggle, but my nutrition has really, really made a big impact for me during this time.
Yeah, that's great. That's amazing that you have people that have been supportive. So I know you mentioned a foundation. I didn't know if you wanted to share anything about that with our listeners, or to tell us some more about what you do at the foundation. And I don't know much about that.
Well, right now, my wife and I are starting a foundation for highly functioning autism for athletes and for people out there who need some help. But our main purpose is to try to help the siblings, the father, the son, the kids that, if someone has autism, they have two brothers or two sisters. How about them? They need help, because usually they're drowning, and so are the parents, the grandparents, because it's such a time-consuming and overwhelming thing sometimes that it drives everybody down. And we've just found that there's just isn't that much help out there for them. So my wife and I have really tried to make an effort to get a foundation up and going. And it's a slow process like everything else, to try to help, not just the athlete or the person who has the autism, but to help the family members, and give them support.
That's great. And, the thing I have found too, as a provider, and especially just with the way things are funded, that, when somebody does become an adult, even if they had services, like maybe even from me in a school, once somebody graduates or ages out of the public school system at about 22, it's really hard for people to get any type of services. So, like when you say, like, is somebody who is, conversational, and they, are on grade level academically, and they could have their own job, there's still a lot of barriers, to being able to socialize in an environment, or be able to know what all the rules are and to process everything that's taking place. So there's still a lot of barriers for autistic individuals that, may appear to others that are conversational and, and all those different types of things. I had somebody on the podcast. He's really cool. His name's Dr. Kerry Magro. He didn't start talking till 4, and now he's a PhD and a professional speaker. And, he said some people would say, like, you don't seem like you have autism, and he would say, well, this is just one part of how my brain operates. But for him, he has a lot of sensory needs. And, he said that nobody can really see that, but it's something that he's dealing with, and it's not something that we know about. So he does a lot of public speaking, and he always inspires people. I'm sure like your story inspires people and inspires parents. And it's just hard, right? Because it's a spectrum. And now it's 1 in 44. The CDC just changed the prevalence rate. So when I started presenting about 10 years ago, I would say it's 1 in 252. And so just last month, the CDC said it's 1 in 44 individuals that are autistic. So, whether it's somebody who's not yet speaking or somebody who's out like you, professional golfer doing these amazing things, everybody maybe has a couple things that they need support with. And just, I think it's great, that type of work and realizing, yes, that the siblings do need that support too, especially, I have 3 kids of my own, but it's like, if I had an autistic child, I would probably be taking that child to all their therapy appointments and maybe lugging my kids around and, and it's hard to keep it all balanced. So
it's very hard to keep balanced. And as you said, even the professor who started talking at age 4, now he speaks. I'm sure his wife, if you see the person every once in a while, you don't notice it. But if you live with that person or you're around that person every day, you will notice it.
Yeah.
And it will come out at times. And that's what people don't understand, that, well, he acts normal. He plays golf and he speaks and all that. And, there's no autism there. But if you are around that person 24/7 all the time, it appears. And no matter how prepared you are for it, it will knock you on your butt.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Billy, and sharing your journey with us. I know that it's going to inspire a lot of people. I was very excited to talk with you today. Do you have a website or anywhere that you would want to direct people if they want to learn more about you or your work? Is there anything specific? I don't know if you're ever online or have anything like that.
I'm not too much online right now. We'd have to probably talk to Steve a little bit more. We're still trying to get the foundation up and going and all that. And
wonderful.
The wife, Steve, are kind of handling that right now, but we're trying to get it up and going. Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Billy. It was really great to meet you.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Autism Outreach. If you enjoyed the show today, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode full of actionable strategies you can use in your therapy room. Write a review too. That would mean so much to me. I always love hearing from you. Have a specific topic that you want included on a future show? Reach out over on Instagram, ABA Speech by Rose, or visit me at www.abaspeech.org.